If you're someone who has just left a relationship that made you feel very unhappy and maybe even unhealthy and toxic at times, and somehow you can't figure out why you want to come back to that relationship and you're going back and forth with the decision. One day you're very happy with the decision, and then the next day you want to come back to that old life. Why is that? In this video, I will explain to you one of the most mind-blowing reasons as to why this happens. And this reason often gets overlooked. But if we don't deal with this reason, and if you don't know that this is the pattern that you're experiencing, then that internal conflict will just get worse, and it's going to be hard for you to peacefully move on. So if you do want to peacefully move on and just get on with your life and really start living the life that is fulfilling to you, then make sure you watch this. So one of the first things that you want to think about is how that old relationship felt for you. What were the actual feelings that you were feeling back then? Now, in this part, you really want to be honest with yourself. Don't go with the fantasies that you've had and the idealizations and romanticizations that you've had in your mind. Make sure you are honest with yourself. Put the good, bad, the ugly, and everything in between. And just remember what it was like, what feelings were you feeling predominantly, and how stressed out you actually were when you were in that relationship. And then, so do that for the old relationship, and then compare the actual feelings that you have now. And you can be honest with yourself with this one too, right? The good, bad, the ugly, and everything in between. Write down and compare and contrast the two. Because once you can compare and contrast that too, you will find, like, you'll realize what the difference is. And this difference is the exact reason why some people tend to go back to those unhappy relationships. Why? Because that old relationship has become their old homeostasis, right? It doesn't matter how unhealthy or unhappy they were. That was their normal. They're normal. They just didn't know any better, right? It's kind of like when we are someone who has trained all the time, right? Say you're someone who goes weightlifting all the time and you're so used to lifting heavier weight, right? Right now, your normal is, shoulder pressing 20 pounds, right? And so that's your normal. That's what you're used to. If you go a little bit less than that, it's doesn't, you can lift that with just a finger, right? If you go too heavy, it becomes uncomfortable. It becomes unfamiliar. It is the same with relationships, right? That gap, that difference is the conflict that your mind and your body is trying to figure out. So when you look at your old relationship and it's very unhappy, it's very stressful, that has become your old norm, right? And so when you compare it to what you're currently experiencing now at a present moment, maybe the stress levels of that old relationship is all the way up here, but right now you're feeling stress levels maybe all the way down here. This gap right here, this too, is the reason why people tend to go back to that old relationship, because when we are living in a lower stress response, right? Although that is technically better for us, right? Although you are happier, it is still unfamiliar. It's not your homeostasis. It is a new homeostasis that you now have to adapt to. And so because this gap here can sometimes feel very overwhelming, right? That gap is sometimes very unconscious to us. We don't notice it until we actually sit down and look at it side by side, right? And once you can do that, once you can gain that clarity, it makes it a lot easier for you to then choose a new homeostasis. It is up to you now to choose and adapt to this happier state. And, this is why people, tend to stay in unhappy relationships, right? And unhappy marriages, because that's just what they're used to. Change is too much. As humans, we hate change, right? change is unknown, which means we could potentially die. That's really what our brain is the most concerned about, right? It's all about survival. So when we start living in, even if it's a better stressful state, or an improve stress levels, even though it's better for us, just that new homeostasis conflicts with what we are used to, and our brains and our bodies just need time to adapt to this new thing. And so that's why it's a bit difficult, right? That's why people tend to go back, because the old feeling is too familiar, even though it's not the best for them. It's like drug use, right? People know that it's not good to take drugs, but that familiar high that they get in while taking drugs is exactly why they come back to it. It's the same thing in relationships, right? So now that you can compare and contrast, really, I definitely would 100% encourage you to write down the pre and write down the now and compare and contrast, because when you can see it, once you can actually see it and you can feel it tangibly in your body, it's easier to make that choice, right? Although it's uncomfortable for you to adapt to this new familiar happiness, you can kind of tell yourself that's kind of ridiculous for you to not choose happiness, right? Right, when you can see it right in front of you. So this work takes complete honesty with yourself. It is not going to be the most pleasant or easy feeling, but this is exactly what is going to help you to stick to your decision to move on. This is what's really going to help you to stay gone and make sure you don't go back to that unhappy relationship, because you know what happens if you go back, right? You're just going to become unhappy, and you deserve to be happy. You deserve to feel love. You deserve to feel understood. You deserve to have your needs met, and you are worth a lot more than you may believe right now, right? Because you are inherently worthy. So do the work now, because if you don't do the work, if you don't really work on believing your actual worth, that you are worthy of having this new familiar happiness, then that craving of the old relationship is going to come back, right? Because as a deep level, at a deep level, you're not going to feel worthy of having good things happen to you. But like with any other things, as humans, we are extremely adaptable, right? We are amazing. We are highly adaptable. You can adapt to this new homeostasis as well. So are you going to make the choice to make happiness your new homeostasis? Make sure you like and subscribe for more content on peaceful separations, peacefully moving on, and healing codependent patterns.